What's up, YouTube? This is Bystander X79. All right, guys, I'm here today on the official Yu-Gi-Oh page from Konami. Turns out last week on December 4th, Konami updated the rules for tag dueling. I can tell you this right now. I've remember multiple times this year that Paul from Team APS has asked for Konami to update these rules, especially when it comes down to things like pendulum scales, and as well as the whole thing with the extra monster zone, how it plays out with the tag duels. To be very honest, just going over these rules um, completely, a lot of the stuff is more common sense, which does make sense in a way. So there's not going to be any confusion, especially when it comes down to pendulum scales. All right. So bottom line right here is that when you're entering into a tag duel tournament and you have a partner that you've strategized with them about how they're going to set up your decks and stuff like that, all right, each player is going to be designated as Duelist A or Duelist B, and the way that's going to happen is how you put the names on the team registration form. First name is Duelist A, second name is Duelist B, and that's pretty much it. All right, each player has their own field, as seen as with starter deck Link Strike. So that was the first starter deck we got in the Link Frames era. Okay, so that basically you have access to two extra monster zones that you're sharing with the guy sitting across from you. Okay, so it's a lot like standard duels in that particular situation. Um, each duelist uses their own deck. Duh, that has to happen. You're not sharing decks, and you're also not sharing extra decks. That's actually mentioned later. It should have been mentioned up here. Each duelist only utilizes their own pendulum scales, which means, yeah, the scales that you have control are yours and yours alone. Your opponent can't utilize them for pendulum summoning. Okay, um, and that's actually pretty cool. And then duelists may use their teammates' cards that they possess to pay for costs or to meet summoning conditions of monsters. They give you some pretty good examples right here. If both players are playing Lightsworns, and there's a total of 4 Lightsworn monsters with different names between both teammates' graveyards, either player can drop Judgment Dragon. All right, and the same thing goes with the Chaos monsters, whether it be Chaos Sorcerers, the BLS, the Emperor Dragon, or Levianair. They're all, as long as you have the materials in either teammates' graveyards, you can banish them out of the graveyards. The restrictions right here, you're trying to summon Dark Arm Dragons, and both players have 2 Dark Monsters in their graveyards. Yeah, you're not summoning that card, so makes it a little harder to summon this, but all right. And then, like I said, this particular situation is basically each player controlling their own scales and being able to pendulum summon out the levels of monsters that those scales represent. Okay, team shares a total life points of 16,000. This is not a shock. I've seen this in a lot of the local tag duels that happen in my area, so not an issue with that. This one, I actually kind of rose an eyebrow on me. Each team can only have one field spell on the field at a time, so which basically means if either duelist on a team controls a field spell, it must be sent to the graveyard before a new one can be placed, whether it be set or activated on the field. Okay, so that means if player A has a deck that's really dependent on their field spell and they need to keep it up at all times, player B is not going to be able to access their field spell if their deck requires it. That could be kind of detrimental to certain strategies. But yeah, to be honest, it might be better to strategize with your partner beforehand, so they can run a deck that doesn't really require a field spell, and that helps complement your deck overall. So overall, it's a good strategy in that particular situation. All right, each duelist can only summon monsters from their own extra deck. Makes very good sense. So even if you're using your opponent's monsters as materials, it's monsters. The monsters have to come from your own extra deck. Okay. Again, you have to ask permission to use this. Okay, and then of course the same thing with whether it be ignition effects, normal spells, quick effects, trigger effects, or continuous effects that the team member possesses can only be utilized by that duelist unless that card can be activated by all duelists. Okay, I'll give you an example with a field spell. Um, a field spell like Fusion K can be activated by all duelists to summon out fusion monsters. On the other hand, a card that might be like Dark Room of Nightmare can only be utilized by the player that played it. Okay? They give you some pretty good examples right here. All right. Teammates, of course, teammates can talk, compare hands, and share information freely with each other. And he must come to an agreement before making plays involving each other. Cards again always ask permission um, to any of your other players that you're playing with, whether they're your opponents or your partner. It just makes common sense. You can't take an extended period to discuss actions. So basically, no stalling, no being douches and stalling. I mean, and then you have the whole the loss situation. Life points reach 0. Either duelist is decked out, or an auto win is reached. Okay, and then when it comes down to this here, each duelist may run 3 of any card that's currently not on the forbidden, and is only 1 on limited, and then 2 of semi-limited, which basically means you're building a deck for yourself. Don't worry about having to share the um, semi-limited or limited restrictions with your partner. Um, they're building their deck by themselves. So, okay, it makes sense. Okay, so the turn procedure. If you guys have either read the Yu-Gi-Oh manga or seen the tag duels in the anime, you pretty much get the whole gist of how the turn structure works. One person goes, and then an opposing player goes, and then it's your partner's turn, and then it's your opponent's partner. All right, so it makes complete sense. 1A can't draw on their opening turn, and then the one other thing here is that, and it's mentioned down here in the attacking section, should be mentioned up here, but the first 3 duelists of the duel, 1A, 2A, and 1B, cannot attack. All right, so that does actually make sense. It was kind of mentioned in the anime that, yeah, um, you can't attack a player that hasn't had the ability to play a card yet. So fine, okay. Tag dueling matches are run in best of 1 duel format, which basically means you play 1 duel and that's it, and then move on to your next team, whether you win or lose. Match rounds are 30 minutes, and then the tag dueling rounds will utilize the current end of match procedures um, when time is called during your tournament. All right. I like the fact how they say the current end of match procedures, which means fingers crossed Konami might change them in the future. Okay, attacking, you can only utilize the monsters you control to attack. You can't utilize your partner's monsters to attack. I know it sucks, especially if they have this awesome boss monster on the field that you really want to attack with. No, not yours. Okay. Another thing is that if, let's say, player 2A has a completely empty field and 2B has maybe a couple monsters, you gotta go through those monsters first before you can attack 2A directly. All right. Over here, this is more or less about how the chains work and passing back and forth priority, and how to resolve effects. Uh, Very simple is that during a duel's turn, either player may activate spell speed 2 or higher effects. Just as they do in the standard duel, teammates may also activate spell speed 2 or higher effects as it was their opponent's turn. So duelist A activates Monster Reborn, and any of the duelists may activate the effect of DV Crow. All right. When it comes down to starting chain, either opponent may respond by activating a card or effect in response to the original chain link, but you gotta double check with your partner first before responding. And both players have to agree. Okay. Basically, it's basically you activate card A, your opponents have a chance to respond. If they do so, fine. If not, they pass it back to you, and then your partner can respond. So you get the whole idea of what's going on, and they give you some pretty good examples right here. Multi-trigger effects. If a lot of effects hit the great that are something that field the graveyard go off. Turn players is going to be the first link in the chain, and then it's their partner, and then however your opponents want to organize their card. So you got to be careful with the missing of timing, especially when the whole when and if thing, because that can actually mess up a lot of your opponent's strategies. And then, of course, card effects that count turns or phases count the appropriate turns and phases. So Swords of Revealing Light is activated by 1A of Team 1. Team 2 cannot attack during 2A's next turn, 2B's next turn, and 2A's turn after that. Okay, because then there'll be 3 turns for Sword of Revealing Light. Okay, Final Countdown counts each player's turn, so you get that get to that win condition a little bit faster in tag duels. I can actually see this being kind of useful if Final Countdown would be allowed, since it's kind of banned right now. And then of course Ledger Domain counts both teammates standby phases. All right, and then of course we have with this card effects, especially when it comes down to those that target, you have to pick the target beforehand. You can't just willy-nilly say, oh, that affects both. No, you have to pick a player. Like revealing Secret Barrel, it counts players and cards hand. So 1A has to choose an opponent at the activation, and then when it resolves, you hit that player with burn damage. In the case of effects that are more continuous based, like here with Trickstar Lycanus, when Trickstar Lycanus hits the field, you have to select a player, one of your opponents that's going to be receiving damage from that Lycanus. All right, and then when it comes down for both players, the duelist activating the card or effect will choose the duelists that will be affected by activation. They give a really good example with hand destruction. Both players on team 1 have 2 cards in their hand, but only duelist 2A has 2 cards in their hand. Duelist 2B only has 1. So the player who activates hand destruction can choose their partner, especially if their partner is playing maybe a graveyard-based deck, to help them out a little bit more. And then they have to select the 2A, since 2B is not a viable target at resolving hand destruction. I'm going to give you a lot of examples with Contract of Don 1000. I mean, I kind of wish that this was more meta relevant, but can I just give you examples of what we're going to be given? Okay, cards that affect your opponent's side of the field, graveyard, or banish affects both players on their thing. So, if an effect allows the duelist to use attribute cards on their opponent's field, you may choose cards from either opponent's field. I mean, that makes the Monarch Stone Fortress a little bit more powerful already. It's not targeting, but now you can actually just utilize. Activating that card allows you access to both of your opponent's fields for tribute fodder. All right, and then if a card effect states all monster spells, traps, or a specific part of the field performing an action, then it affects all players. And they give you a good thing with Escrow Talker. If 2B and 1B have extra monster zones that are filled, then basically all 4 players lose up to three unused main monster zones as long as Exo Talker's on the field. All right, and they also go on to explain about summoning off with Lava Golem, as well as using Evenly Match, which just gets so stupidly awesome. Makes Evenly Match very powerful in tag duels. And of course, we have cards prevents opponent from performing action. It prevents both players from doing this. So Kaiko blocks both players from banishing cards from the graveyard. If Duelist 1A activates Reckless Greed, the team will skip the next 2 consecutive draw phases. So hopefully both decks have some really good draw power, or at least they have some searching abilities to help. And then set rotation. Any duelist cannot activate or set other field spells until both cards set by set rotation are no longer set. All right. Moving forward, we get some more rules with this situation. Cyber Dragon can't be summoned if your teammate controls a monster. So, but that basically means if you're going to be playing a Cyber Dragon in attack duels, you got to be player A. Otherwise, you're going to get screwed over by a partner. They use Vanity's Emptiness as a card here. If a card is sent from the teammate side of the field or their opponent's side of the field to the graveyard, boom, Vanity's Emptiness is destroyed. It's banned, but that's always been a weakness. I mean, they could have still won, but hey, it's banned now. So okay, and then of course we have the whole situation with Domain of the True Monarchs. Both players have to have no extra deck, and they have to have controlling a tribute summon monster, and that will lock out both opponents' teams from summoning from the extra deck. Same thing goes with Secret Village of the Spellcasters. 1A or 2B has to control a spellcaster monster, and then that'll lock out both players on the opponent's side from being able to activate spells, but both duelists of Team 1, 1A and 1B, they can't, if they don't control a spellcaster, then the field spell hits them with they can't activate spell cards. So you get the whole idea with that situation. I mean, it's interesting that only one player on Team 1 can control a spellcaster, and that locks out both players on um, Team 2, and but both players on Team 1 can't have to have a. I mean, can't have a spellcaster in order to be negatively affected by the field spell. So very interesting. All right, and then of course we have Duelist 1A has a face down spell and trap. Okay, the teammate may not activate the effect of Treeborn Farm that will special summon from this graveyard. That kind of hurts if you're running Frognarts, but then again, you can always get around it by playing other cards. Maybe running a Paleozoic Engine will be a little bit better in that particular situation because you're getting the trap cards back whenever you activate a trap card. So, all right, set cards may be viewed by either teammate, but can only activate by a card's controller. Make again common sense there. And the owner means the same thing as it does in standard duel. The owner is the duelist whose deck contains the card. All right, so all this stuff is pretty much common sense. It does clarify pendulums and extra monster zones. I mean, the extra monster zones, both players, you and the guy who's sitting across from you, share. When you use one, the other one automatically goes to your opponent unless you extra link. That stays the same. So, yeah. But here we go. Hopefully in 2020, we're going to be getting some tag duel tournaments. I know there's going to be another team tournament. I think it's going to be the YCS Las Vegas at the beginning of next year. That was the whole 3-member team duel that's actually going on. That was actually kind of fun last year from what a lot of people who actually attended it said. So I'm definitely kind of curious to see what's going to happen here with more tag dueling rules moving forward. All right, guys. Let me know down in the comments section below what you think about these new rule changes to the tag dueling format. I would really love to turn on and hear your opinions about it. As always, like the video if you like it. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this on my channel. Enable notifications not to miss any uploads. Join the conversation here in my Discord server. The link is in the description box below. Follow me on Twitter at BystanderX79, guys. Until next time, as always, peace!